Mama? Mama, are you all right? Water, please.
Thank you, my daughter. May the Almighty bless you. When did you last eat, Mama?
The red dust of harmattan season hung heavy in the air as Amara wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. At 23 years old, her hands were already rough and calloused. Hands that told the story of a life spent scrubbing floors, washing clothes, and carrying heavy loads for people who barely looked at her face. Amara, these floors won't clean themselves. Madame Folake's sharp voice cut through the afternoon heat like a knife. Yes, Ma, Amara whispered, dropping to her knees once more, though every muscle in her body screamed in protest. She had been working since 5 that morning, and the sun was already beginning its descent toward evening. Her breakfast had been a single piece of cassava bread. Her lunch would be the same. This was life in the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, where she had come 3 years ago with dreams as bright as the tropical sun. Dreams of education. Dreams of becoming a nurse. Dreams of sending money back to her aging mother in the village of Okija, where drought had turned their once fertile land into cracked earth that yielded nothing but heartache. But dreams, Amara had learned, were expensive luxuries that girls like her could not afford. She lived in a single room in Ajigunal, a neighborhood where poverty wore many faces but told the same story. Her room was barely large enough for the thin mattress on the floor, a small kerosene stove, and a plastic bucket she used for bathing. The walls were stained with mold, and during the rainy season, water seeped through the ceiling, forcing her to sleep sitting up, holding a bowl to catch the drips. Every morning, she woke before dawn and walked 40 minutes to Madame Folake's house in the better part of town. She cleaned 6 days a week for 20,000 naira a month, barely enough to pay her rent, send a little to her mother, and eat 1 meal a day. Sometimes not even that. You know what your problem is, her friend Ngozi had told her just last week, as they sat outside Amara's room, sharing a meal of gari and groundnuts. You're too kind, Usaf. In this Lagos, if you don't fight for yourself, you'll die poor and forgotten. Ngozi was probably right. Just yesterday, Amara had given her lunch to a street child who was crying from hunger, even though her own stomach had been empty since morning. The week before, she had paid for an old man's medication at the pharmacy, using money she had saved for new shoes. Her only pair was held together with wire and prayers. Kindness is not foolishness, Amara had replied quietly. My grandmother always said, the hand that gives is never empty. The well that provides water never runs dry. Ngozi had laughed, a bitter sound. Your grandmother lived in a village where people still believed in fairy tales. This is Lagos. Miracles don't happen here. Only money talks. Now, as Amara scrubbed Madame Folake's pristine marble floors, she wondered if Ngozi was right. She wondered if her grandmother's wisdom was just beautiful words that meant nothing in the harsh reality of city life. That evening, as Amara finally left Madame Folake's house, her body aching and her spirit weary, she counted the coins in her pocket. 300 naira. It was all she had until the end of the month, still 3 days away. She needed to make it last. 200 for transport, 100 for food. The walk to the bus stop took her through the market district, where traders were packing up their wares for the day. The smell of roasted plantain and suya made her stomach clench with hunger, but she kept walking, eyes straight ahead. That's when she saw her. The old woman sat huddled against the wall of a closed shop, her wrapper torn and faded, her gray hair matted and wild. She was so thin that Amara could see the outline of her bones through her skin. Her eyes were closed, and for a terrible moment, Amara thought she might be dead. But then the woman's chest rose and fell, a shallow, labored breath. People walked past without a second glance. This was Lagos after all. Poverty was as common as the red dust that coated everything. One more homeless person was just part of the landscape, invisible to those who had learned to look away. Amara stopped. She should keep walking. She had her own problems, her own hunger. her own struggles. What could she possibly do for this stranger? But something made her kneel beside the old woman. "Mama," she said softly. "Mama, are you all right?" The woman's eyes fluttered open, clouded with age and pain. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Water, please." Amara looked around frantically. There was a water seller across the street, a young boy with a cooler of pure water sachets. She hurried over, her mind already calculating. One sachet was 20 naira. She could spare it, though it would mean walking part of the way home instead of taking the bus. She bought 2 sachets and returned to the old woman, helping her sit up and sip slowly. "Thank you, my daughter," the woman whispered. "May the Almighty bless you." "When did you last eat, Mama?" Amara asked, though she already knew the answer from the woman's hollow cheeks and trembling hands. The woman just shook her head, tears forming in her clouded eyes. Amara's hand went to her pocket, to the 300 naira that was supposed to last her 3 more days. Without allowing herself to think, she walked back to the suya seller and bought a small portion of meat and bread. It cost her 150 naira. Half of everything she had. The old woman wept as she ate, and Amara felt her own eyes burning with tears. She recognized this hunger. She lived with it every day. But somehow, watching this elderly woman, someone's mother, someone's grandmother, reduced to begging on the streets, broke something open in Amara's heart. "Mama, where do you stay?" she asked gently. The woman gestured vaguely at the street. "Here. Or anywhere that will have me. Have no home, daughter. My children. They are all gone. Scattered. I don't know anymore." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Soon it would be dark, and the streets would become dangerous. Amara thought of her tiny room, barely big enough for herself. She thought of her landlord, who was already threatening to evict her for last month's late payment. She thought of Ngozi's words. "In this Lagos, if you don't fight for yourself, you'll die poor and forgotten." But she also thought of her grandmother, who had raised her after her father died, who had taught her that wealth was not measured in money but in the size of one's heart. "Mama," Amara heard herself say, "come home with me." The old woman stared at her in disbelief. "Child, you don't know me. Could be anyone. I could be." "You are hungry and alone, and night is coming," Amara said firmly. "That's all I need to know. Can you walk?" It took them nearly 2 hours to reach Ajigunal, walking slowly to accommodate the old woman's frail steps. By the time they climbed the narrow stairs to Amara's room, both women were exhausted. Amara's neighbors peered out of their doorways, their eyes full of questions and judgment. She could hear their whispers. "That girl is too foolish. Bringing a stranger into her home. She can barely feed herself." Inside the small room, Amara helped the old woman sit on the mattress and brought water for her to wash her face and hands. She lit her kerosene stove and cooked the last of her rice, adding a small tin of sardines she had been saving for an emergency. She gave the larger portion to the old woman and ate the rest herself, pretending she was full when her stomach still growled with hunger. "What is your name, child?" the old woman asked, her voice stronger now after food and water. "Amara. It means grace in my language." "Grace," the old woman repeated, a strange smile crossing her weathered face. "How fitting. And I am called Mama Saad. Tell me, Amara of Grace, why did you bring me here? You are poor yourself. Can see it. So why?" Amara was quiet for a moment, thinking. "My grandmother used to say that we are all connected like threads in a cloth. When one thread breaks, the whole fabric weakens. I suppose I could not walk away from you and still call myself human." Mama Sada's eyes filled with tears. "In all my days wandering these streets, you are the first person to see me. Really see me. Not as a beggar. Not as a problem. But as a person." That night they shared the thin mattress, and for the first time in months, Amara did not feel alone in her small room. She fell asleep to the sound of Mama Sada's gentle breathing, unaware that her life was about to change forever. The next morning, Amara woke before dawn as usual, But instead of an empty room, she found Mama Sod already awake, sitting quietly in the corner. "Good morning, Mama," Amara said, stretching her aching muscles. "Good morning, daughter. I have been thinking I should leave now. You have already done more than enough. I don't want to be a burden." "A burden?" Amara shook her head firmly. "Mama, where would you go?" "Back to the streets." "Well, you will stay here until we find a better solution." "But child, you have nothing. How will you feed two mouths when you can barely feed yourself?" It was a fair question, one that Amara had been avoiding since last night. She had no money for food. She had no money for transport. And payday was still 2 days away. "God will provide," Amara said with more confidence than she felt. "He always does." She left for work that morning, walking the entire way to save the bus fare. It took her nearly 2 hours, and she arrived at Madame Folake's house exhausted, her feet blistered and aching. "You're late," Madame Folake snapped. "And you look terrible. Don't bring your problems into my house, you hear me?" "Yes, Ma." "I'm sorry, Ma," Amara whispered, tying her wrapper tighter and getting to work. The day was brutal. With no food in her stomach since the small portion of rice the night before, Amara felt dizzy and weak. But she pushed through, scrubbing, sweeping, washing, ironing. When Madame Folake finally dismissed her late that evening, Amara walked the 2 hours back home, her vision blurring with exhaustion. She found Mama Sod waiting anxiously by the door. "Child, I was so worried. You look like a ghost." "I'm fine, Mama," Amara said, though she had to steady herself against the wall. "You are not fine. You are starving. And it's because of me." Mama Sod's voice broke. "I should never have let you take me in. I am a curse, not a blessing." "Don't say that," Amara said sharply, then softened her tone. "Mama, you are not a curse. You are a person who deserves dignity and care. We will manage. Tomorrow is payday. We just need to hold on one more day." But the next morning brought a catastrophe. Amara arrived at Madame Folake's house to find her employer in a rage. An expensive vase had been broken, and Madame Folake immediately blamed Amara. "It wasn't me, Ma," Amara protested. "I wasn't anywhere near." "Are you calling me a liar?" Madame Folake's eyes flashed with anger. "I'm deducting the cost from your salary. 5,000 naira. 5,000 naira. That was a quarter of her entire month's wages." "Please, Ma," Amara begged, tears streaming down her face. "I have nothing. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Please, I need that money." "Then you should have been more careful." Madame Folake turned her back. "Now get out. And don't bother coming back. You're fired." The world seemed to tilt beneath Amara's feet. Fired. No job. No money. No food. And now she had Mama Sod depending on her too. She walked home in a daze, her mind numb with shock. How would she pay her rent? How would she eat? How would she send money to her mother in the village? When she reached her room, she found Mama Sod humming an old Yoruba tune, using a rag to clean the small space. "Amara, you're home early." Mama Sod stopped when she saw Amara's face. "Child, what happened?" The story poured out of Amara in broken sobs. The vase, the deduction, the firing, the hopelessness. "This is all my fault," Mama Sod whispered, tears running down her wrinkled cheeks. "If you hadn't taken me in, if you hadn't spent your money on me." "No." Amara grabbed the old woman's hands. "Don't you dare blame yourself. If I had to choose again, I would make the same choice. Some things are more important than money." They held each other and cried. Two poor women in a city that had no mercy for the weak. That night they had nothing to eat. Amara boiled water and added a pinch of salt, and they drank it like soup, pretending it was enough. "Tell me about your village," Mama Sod said softly, as they lay on the mattress, trying to ignore their hunger. "Tell me about your family." And Amara did. She talked about her mother, struggling alone on the dried-up farm. She talked about her father who had died when she was 12, leaving them with nothing. She talked about her grandmother, who had raised her with stories and wisdom and love. She sounds like a wonderful woman, Mama Saad said. What was her favorite saying? The hand that gives is never empty, Amara recited. I used to believe it. No, I don't know what I believe anymore. Mama Saad was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Your grandmother was right, child. But sometimes the blessings don't come when we expect them. Sometimes they come when we've given up hope entirely. That's when we learn what faith truly means. The next morning, Amara woke to find 3 days' eviction notice slipped under her door. Her landlord had lost patience. She sat on the floor, staring at the paper, feeling nothing. She had gone beyond despair into a strange, numb acceptance. This was it. She had nothing left. Amara, Mama Saad said gently. I need to tell you something. I need to tell you the truth about who I am. Amara looked up, confused. What do you mean, Mama? But before Mama Saad could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. Amara opened it to find a well-dressed man standing in the corridor, looking completely out of place in the run-down building. He was wearing an expensive agbada, and gold rings glinted on his fingers. Are you Amara? He asked. Yes, she whispered, her heart pounding. Was this more trouble? A debt collector. My name is Chief Adewale. I am looking for my mother. His voice cracked with emotion. Her name is Saad. Saad Adewale. I was told she might be here. Amara's head spun. She turned to look at Mama Saad, who had risen from the mattress, tears streaming down her face. Colonel, the old woman whispered. My son. The man's eyes widened in shock and anguish. Mama. Oh, Mama. He rushed into the room and fell to his knees before the old woman, sobbing. I've been searching for you for 6 months. 6 months. We thought you were dead. The story came out in broken pieces, interrupted by tears and embraces. Mama Saad had lived with her eldest son in a big house in Ikoyi, one of Lagos's wealthiest neighborhoods. But she had been suffering from dementia, and one day, during a moment of confusion, she had wandered away from the house. By the time the family realized she was gone, she had disappeared into the sprawling city. They had searched everywhere. Police reports, radio announcements, posters on every street corner. But Lagos is vast and chaotic, and somehow Mama Saad had slipped through the cracks, ending up alone and forgotten on the streets. We hired private investigators, Chief Adewale explained, wiping his eyes. We offered rewards. We never stopped looking. And then, 3 days ago, someone reported seeing an old woman matching my mother's description in Ajigunal. They said she was with a young woman. You. He turned to Amara. His eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't quite name. You took her in, he said, his voice breaking. You fed her. You cared for her. When you had nothing yourself. He looked around the tiny room, taking in the poverty, the eviction notice on the floor, the empty pot on the kerosene stove. Why? Why would you do this? Amara's throat was tight with tears. Because she needed help. And I could not walk away. Chief Adewale stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He knelt before her, this wealthy, powerful man, and bowed his head. You saved my mother's life, he said. You showed her kindness when the world had abandoned her. You shared your last meal with her. You gave her your bed. You. His voice broke completely. There are no words for what you have done. No words for what this means to me. Please, sir, stand up, Amara said, uncomfortable with his gesture. I only did what anyone should do. But nobody else did, Mama Saad said softly. Hundreds of people walked past me on those streets. Hundreds saw me and looked away. But you, child, you saw me. You saw me as a human being worthy of love and dignity. That is the rarest gift in this world. What happened next moved so quickly that Amara could barely process it. Chief Adewale insisted on taking both women to his home immediately. Amara protested, but he wouldn't hear it. You think I will leave you here in this place, after what you've done for my family? Never. You are coming with us. The house in Ikoyi was like something from a dream. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, gardens with fountains, staff in uniform. Amara stood in the grand foyer, feeling completely out of place in her faded wrapper and worn slippers. Chief Adewale's wife, a kind woman named Bimp, wept when she saw Mama Saad. Their 3 children crowded around their grandmother, crying with relief and joy. And in the midst of the chaos and celebration, no one forgot Amara. "You will stay here as long as you need," Chief Adewale declared. "We have many rooms. You will have everything you require." "But sir, I cannot." "Please," he said gently. "Let us do this. Let us repay even a fraction of the kindness you showed." That night, Amara slept in a bed so soft she thought she might sink right through it. She bathed in a bathroom bigger than her entire room in Ajigunal had been. She ate a meal that made her weep, not just because of the food but because of the overwhelming sense of being cared for, of being valued. But the miracles were only beginning. Over the next few days, as Amara stayed in the house and kept Mama Saad company during her recovery, Chief Adewale learned her full story. Her lost job, her dreams of becoming a nurse, her mother struggling in the village. "You want to be a nurse?" he asked one evening over dinner. "I did, sir, once. But that dream is long gone. I have no education, no money, no." "What if I told you that dream is not gone?" He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "What if I told you I could make it happen?" Amara's heart began to race. "Sir, I don't understand." "I own 3 hospitals in Lagos," Chief Adewale said. "I am on the board of the Nursing Council. And I have connections at the University of Lagos. If you are willing to work hard, if you are truly committed, I can arrange for your nursing education. Full scholarship. Everything paid for." Amara couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. "Sir, why would you do this?" "Because you deserve it," he said simply. "Because you have a good heart, and this world needs more nurses with good hearts. Because you saved my mother, and I can never repay that debt, but I can try." The tears came then, unstoppable years of pain and struggle and hopelessness pouring out of Amara in great heaving sobs. But there was more. Chief Adewale arranged for her mother to be brought from the village to Lagos, where she could receive proper medical care and live in comfort. He bought them a beautiful apartment in a good neighborhood, not as grand as his own home but clean and safe and theirs.